This is Beyond the Big Screen podcast with your host, Steve Guerra. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Big Screen podcast, where we talk about great movies and stories so great they should be movies. Links to learn more about our guest today can be found in the show notes. You can support Beyond the Big Screen on Patreon.com. By joining on Patreon, you help keep Beyond the Big Screen sustainable and get many great benefits. Go to patreon.com/Beyond the Big Screen to learn more and sign up. Find show notes, links to subscribe, and leave Apple Podcast reviews by going to our website, beyondthebigscreen.com. And now, let's go beyond the big screen.
Today, we have another frightening episode of Beyond the Big Screen. We continue our brief series on some classics of the Halloween and horror genre. In previous episodes, Mustache Chris and I have talked about The Thing and Fright Night. In this episode, we are going to tackle one of the classic horror films of all times, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Chris, how are you doing tonight? You ready for this?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge love Nightmare on Elm Street. Grew up with it, watched all the sequels. We're only going to be talking about the original one here, but yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I had some bad news happen to me recently, though. I had a good friend of mine pass away, and me and him used to argue about Nightmare on Elm Street and just Freddy Krueger in general all the time, and it just happened. It wasn't planned this way, obviously, and then yeah, we used to argue, like, who's better, Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees, and we're like adults arguing about this. So I always felt like this was, always felt like that was just too funny. Yeah, he was a good friend. He made me laugh a lot. Not any jokes, I'd say, on the podcast, because they were always really bad jokes. But I just wanted to say something about that. Rest in peace, Josh.
Well, we'll dedicate this episode to Josh tonight. And so why Nightmare on Elm Street? Why does that fit into, why did you pick that for our Halloween special this year?
I remember saying to you, I've been wanting to do, I think when we first started doing these, I mentioned Nightmare on Elm Street, like the first Halloween, and like just constantly mentioned it. I grew up watching this. I must have seen this movie growing up from when I was like young to like an adult. I've probably seen this movie like 100 times. You know what I mean? And like the sequels, and I've always enjoyed it. My older sisters watched it. I think they're the ones who let me watch it the first time. And I always Freddy Krueger, the character, always terrified me, because I always had I don't have this problem anymore, but I used to suffer from like sleep paralysis, and I don't know if anybody in the audience knows what that is, but it's like pretty vivid dreams and nightmares where you're kind of half awake and not awake. I mean, it's depicted in like medieval art with like a devil sitting on somebody's chest. And yeah, maybe I got the sleep paralysis from watching Freddy Krueger when I was too young. I don't know. But this slippery idea of like, where does the dream start and where does reality begin? It's always kind of terrified me. And Freddy Krueger himself is an iconic horror film character. Like, I would say, when it's all said and done, when, Robert Englund passes away and someone else is going to play Freddy Krueger, most likely, I don't know, I'd put Freddy Krueger up there with like Dracula, really, in terms of cultural impact.
Yeah, I think that's the real key of key theme of the movie, is that sleep can be terrifying and dreams can be so vivid that they really do blur the line between what is not real and reality. And I think that's in a way why this movie's so terrifying, because it taps into that fear that everybody has of nightmares that are so real. You wake up in cold sweats and you don't know, did that really happen? It's interesting, a little background, and you can get a lot of this more information online, but Wes Craven, the director of the film, came up with this idea from Hmong refugees from the Vietnam War who were having extreme PTSD, and so much that they were having these nightmares and dying in their sleep from just absolutely redlined PTSD.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was, I mean, I think there was a couple other stories too. There was this kid in Africa who like claimed that his dreams were killing him. And, his parents thought he was crazy, obviously. Like, how can your dreams kill? Like, your dreams aren't killing you, right? You just need to get some sleep. That's why you're not feeling good. And I don't know, apparently one night he fell asleep and like he died in his sleep and he was in good health. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Was it Fred Krueger? Obviously not, but it's interesting to think that maybe on a different spectrums, people's dreams can become so intense that it could induce something like a cardiac arrest.
The movie even gets into the science of it. I mean, they don't really dive deep into it, but the movie gets into the science of sleep and that you need that dream sleep, rapid eye movement, REM sleep to be a functioning human being. People who are insomniacs who don't get that REM sleep, it's detrimental to their physical health if they don't get that kind of sleep.
Yeah, well, it can actually kill you, right? Like people who suffer from, I believe it's called sleep apnea, where they just like constantly wake up during the night, so they're never actually getting a full REM cycle. Over a long enough period of time, it can kill you.
Because it's kind of like your brain rebooting every night. So you're getting so much stimulus in your mind that your brain needs to sort that out somehow. It's a really fascinating subject. I'd love to look more into it, but it really is. It kind of blurs the line because you think like, oh, if I just get exercise and I just drink enough water each day and eat vegetables, that's healthy. But there's a mental and an almost spiritual sense of health that you have to have.
Yeah, which it like raises an interesting question about because this whole movie, it's the dreams and reality. It gets a little bit slippery, but it's interesting to think about. Like, from my understanding, they don't really understand why we dream. Where we go to sleep. We spend, let's just say, about half our lives sleeping, dreaming to one degree or another in this other realm, this fantasy realm that many times we wake up can seem just as real as the real world that we're living in, and yet we don't really understand why we have these dreams, and doctors really can't explain it either. And I don't know, I'm interested to hear like your theory and why you think that we dream the way we do. Like you explain the medical reasons why you have to sleep, right? Your body needs to reset, it needs to recharge, but the dreams seem unnecessary.
Yeah, I can't. And I think that they say that even animals dream to some degree or another too. It's so fascinating to me of why we would be wired for that, to have this thing. And I think that for me, not being any sort of scientist or anything, that it has to be that even if we're not conscious of it, we're getting bombarded with, and especially in today's day and age, you get so much stimulus. Like I even find that I'll have more vivid dreams after, say, watching a movie late at night, or maybe doing something that's really that has a lot of stimulus, like playing video games or something like that. If I play video games right before bed, I'll have the craziest, most vivid dreams. Not even necessarily based on the video game, but it seems like it's just amped up. And I think my personal thought is that it has to be with something that we're getting so much input all day that it just has to be cycled through, or you probably would go crazy. Kind of like in the movie, the doctor says, if you don't dream, you'll go cuckoo, cuckoo.
Yeah. I've always felt like dreams, and this is like I don't have anything to back this up, but I've always felt like dreams are kind of like a gateway to a spiritual realm, where this is even if angels, let's just say for argument's sake, angels do exist, right? And demons do exist. They're living in a different dimension, right? Than us. They're living at a higher plane. And I've always kind of felt like dreams, and the reason that we do have dreams, it's our bodies and not our bodies, but our brains are kind of going into this dimension. And this is I don't know, I'll use an example. I'll use a word like purgatory, right? Like it's like the in-between stage between these two dimensions. And this is where, angels or demons can interact with us in some kind of capacity. And it would explain why, like, we have this kind of dream logic where nothing really makes sense. But if you were in a different dimension or an in-between dimension, it wouldn't make any sense to us, right? Us interacting with angels wouldn't make any sense in any logical way. I mean, there's that scene in the book Paradise Lost where Satan is fighting God or fighting God's angels, and he's literally just picking up like boulders that are apparently, like, I'm trying to remember correctly, like the size of like cities, and he's just chucking them because it doesn't make any sense, right? It's in a totally different realm. And I've always felt like this is how angels or demons can interact with us, right? And the nightmares being the demons are trying to interact with us, and then the more pleasant dreams that we have is angels trying to interact with us. And if you read stories, especially like the prophets, like Isaiah and Ezekiel, and you read about the visions that they're having, it really does sound like something straight out of a dream. I know some people, they theorize like, oh, they were experimenting with psychedelics, and I can't say I didn't live at that time, but I would say though, like, if you, like Isaiah with the angels burning his lips with I'm trying to remember correctly, with the charcoal, right? And Ezekiel talking about that crazy wheel, and there's a dream logic to it all. And I almost feel like maybe there's certain individuals that have an ability to somewhat enter this intermediate realm and be able to record what they see more vividly than, say, me or you.
I think too, you can't deny that every major world religion, and every religion, I would probably venture to guess, put some stock in dreams. It's not just Christianity, it's not just Judaism, it's the native religions of North America, of South America, of everywhere, you name it. Dreams and going into some dreamlike status is an integral, or at least a part of the religion that's been discussed and thought about. It's too universal, this really weirdness of dreams, to not be a thing.
Yeah, and even Hinduism, really, a huge part of Hinduism is literally like trying to enter this tranquil dream world, right? In terms of like the yoga and the meditating, and even Buddhism is trying to transcend life, right? That we on this planet. And I don't think that's a coincidence. And I don't think it's a coincidence that like the dreaming and trying to record dreams is, it's universal, right?
Steve here. We are a member of the Parthenon Podcast Network, featuring great shows like Richard Lim's This American President and other great shows. Go to parthenonpodcast.com to learn more, and here is a quick word from our sponsors. Now, finally getting back to Nightmare on Elm Street, I think most people are probably, at least in the broad strokes, people certainly of a certain age know this movie quite well, but the main character is a guy named Freddy Krueger. And maybe you can just make a case of why Fred Krueger is so unique in the canon of horror films.
Oh, yeah. So Freddy Krueger, well, let's set him up a little bit. So Freddy Krueger was, when he was alive, not in the dream world, he was they don't make it explicit in the movie, but I'm pretty sure I know from doing enough research that like he was a pedophile child killer in the neighborhood. And he I think they say he killed 20 kids in Springwood, and something goes wrong with the court case. The cop didn't get a proper search warrant, and judge got paid off, and he was set free. So the town decides, you know what, we're just going to take justice in our own hands, and they burn Freddy Krueger alive. And we don't ever find out how Freddy ends up becoming this demon in this dream world, but he's hell bent on getting revenge against the children of the parents that burned him alive. From my, like, if you compare Freddy Krueger to other, I guess, classic or iconic villains, say, you know, Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th series, Michael Myers from Halloween, Dracula, or zombies. I mean, if you know, let's just go through that list. Like Jason Voorhees, I don't know if your audiences, they know who Jason is, right? He's sympathetic in the sense that he was deformed when he was young. His mother was a lunatic and he was bullied. And that's kind of, and he, you know, became like this mindless killing machine. So like at the core of it, there's something a little bit sympathetic about him. Michael Myers, we don't know, right, anything about him. He's the face. He's just a mindless killing machine. Dracula, you know, if you get into his backstory, which they do, there's a sympathetic story there about how he became, you know, a vampire. And zombies, it's like a disease, really. Whereas like Freddy Krueger, there's nothing sympathetic about him at all, and he enjoys what he's doing. I think that with a lot of horror film icons, there's usually something where you can find a little bit sympathetic about the character. With Freddy, you don't have any of that at all.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. That they build in Fred Krueger's the exposition and his genesis story into this film, which to me, I mean, overall, and I'd love to hear you address this because it is the movie you came up with. It's this movie struggling between a dark psychological thriller and a cheesy teen horror movie. And it's a struggle through that, but that they brought up these elements of a town taking country justice against a person. I mean, just that right off the bat is mind blowing. They live in this wealthy suburb. I mean, by all it's supposed to be like middle America, but it's clearly that's always middle America in the movies, as people live in $1 million houses. But for these people to go take country justice on Fred Krueger and to put that into what on the surface is a cheesy teen horror film, I think that's a really bold move.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The fact that Freddy Krueger is he's a pedophile and a child killer, like that's pushing the envelope too, right? And you know, like the razor, like his glove, which is iconic, his razor glove. It's not very effective in terms of like if you just want to, you know, kill whoever you want to kill. Right? That glove is designed for torment.
Yeah, and terror, right? Which is unlike all the other characters. Like Dracula's, he's like trying to seduce people, and Michael Myers, you don't really know his motive, and Jason, he just as quickly as possible, I want to get the job done. And, you know, zombies is just like an infected person. Where, I mean, it is pretty stunning that some, like, a character this dark, they somehow made it fit within this cheesy 80s teen horror genre. It is an interesting character study of Fred Krueger versus, say, Jerry in Fright Night that we talked about in the last episode, where Jerry the vampire, he's pure evil, but it's in a very different way than the Fred Krueger evil. Fred Krueger is demonic, and I'm having a hard time in my mind wrapping around the difference between, say, somebody like Jerry. Jerry's more of an animal. I tried to talk about this in the last, and I don't know if I made myself got through what I was really trying to think, but Jerry is really a beast. in a way. He's not human. He's got a wrapping of a human, but he's an animal. Whereas, and you could think of an animal really, in a way, an animal's evil. Go look at your cat when it goes and kills a mouse, and really put yourself in the place of the mouse. You would think that that cat is pure evil. Your cuddly, furry cat is a absolutely heartless killer for that little mouse. And sometimes they'll play with them and stuff like that just for fun. That's Jerry. Freddy Krueger is a human, and he's absolutely evil and debased, and that he's doing this to other humans for entertainment.
And I mean, Jerry's a vampire too, right? At the end of the day, Jerry has to do what he does in order to survive, right? He can't,
He's a beast.
He can't eat like steak. He's an animal, right? Like, in a certain degree, you can't entirely blame him. I mean, in the movie Fright Night, he doesn't have to do some of the stuff he does, right? But you can't blame him for killing the way he does, because he has to drink human blood. He really doesn't have a choice in the matter. Where Freddy's just doing this because like you pointed out, like a cat, he just enjoys doing it.
Yeah, well, I'm saying that Jerry is the cat. You're right. Yeah. You're absolutely right. He didn't have to kill people in the way that he did it, but the cat also doesn't have to go and smack the mouse up into the air and play around with it before it eats it. It's just what it does. It's a wild animal. It's a beast. Whereas Freddy Krueger, he is truly human, and he's taken away all the good of humanity, and it's just evil. He's an evil person, and maybe he's even more than that. He is demonic.
Well, and it's the interesting thing about Freddy Krueger is, like, he is in control of the dream world, right? He could dispatch his victims anytime that he wants, but he likes, like you pointed out, like, he's playing with the mouse, he's throwing it up in the air, and he's toying with it, and he's tormenting it. And because, I guess if you want to get into a little kind of serial killer psychology, this Freddy Krueger would be known as like a process killer, where it's like everything leading up to it is what he lives for, and then the kill itself is just, it's whatever, right? And to me, this is what makes him, like I pointed out earlier, is what makes him truly stand out as being truly despicable and truly evil, even in comparison to all these other horror icons, is because, I mean, kind of like, say, somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer, or, like one of these other serial killers, Freddy's just doing what he enjoys.
What do you think? Why does Wes Craven make a movie that has this cheesy teen element to it with a pretty serious killer? What are we supposed to make of that? Are we overthinking this? Should we just enjoy it that this is a teen horror slasher movie, and are we just overthinking it?
I think, to be honest with you, I think at the time Wes was looking for a hit, because he, to be honest, Wes didn't really even, he got pigeonholed into the horror genre, and then he just kind of ran with it. Like, he never, when he initially started, his first movie that he ever did was The Last House on the Left, which is an infamous, it's even difficult to this day to watch. And then he was kind of blacklisted, and like the only work he could really find was like in horror, and he had like a couple of flops. And and if he could do this Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street story, but within the genre of like the teen 80s horror craze that was going on at the time, he could have had like a big hit on his hands. That's what I think. And I think it, we'll eventually down the road, we'll talk about his very interesting film, Wes Craven's The New Nightmare, where it's a lot more serious. But at that time, he wasn't looking for a financial success, right?
One thing that I enjoyed about this movie, and I think you have to put, especially if you're older and you have to put your mindset into it, I think it captured teenagers really well. The meathead boyfriend who the parents vilify, I can't remember what his name is, the guy with the Rod, yeah. Rod wasn't a bad guy necessarily. He was just a teenage punk, and the dad, I mean, he was the worst nightmare for a parent to be coming around, but he wasn't that bad. Johnny Depp, his character seemed like just the kind of the kid next door, maybe a little goofy, but they really came across as teens.
Yeah, and then like Heather Langenkamp, Nancy, West really wanted to have like a girl that had a girl that legitimately looked like the girl next door, and that's like not a knock against her looks or what have you. She legitimately looks like the girl next door, which is, I mean, far too often in Hollywood, the girl next door is like, you know, like a supermodel or what have you. You know what I mean? And yeah, I don't know. I think she was 21 or something when she did this movie, but I could see her passing off as a senior in high school.
And I think their struggles of them lying to go hang out and have a sleepover party together and all of that stuff. If you look at it from a parent's perspective, yeah, you would be absolutely furious. But did you do that as a teenager? Yeah, sure. You did do all that stuff as a teenager.
Oh yeah, for sure. And and then like, you know, and then they do like little subtle things, or like Johnny Depp's character is kind of like the preppy kid, and like him and Nancy live in like kind of the richer, nicer part of the neighborhood, and Tina, who's the original, who's the first girl that we see, actually, you could tell that she's from the rougher part of the neighborhood, and so is Rod, and her family situation's kind of broken. One thing I think that they really didn't just kind of change gears a little bit. Like one thing I thought that Wes did that was really cool is that they set up the movie that Tina is going to be like your lead girl. She's going to be the hero, and you know, for a good part of the little bit of the movie, that's the impression that you get, right? And then she's killed off like really quickly. Yeah, probably one of the more brutal murders I've seen within the genre of film, right? We're not going to get into details, but you saw it, and it's eerie because there's no music playing, and it's just like kind of her screaming, and it's just like when you're first watching the movie. When I saw it the first time, I was like, whoa. What's going on here? I thought she was supposed to be the hero.
Yeah, and when you get down to brass tacks, there is no hero in the movie, really. It's just Nancy who morphs into the lead character, who you get no sign. Anything of what like you were saying in the beginning of the movie, you think that Nancy's going to support Tina, but then very quickly, that was a jarring thing, I think, of how quickly that switched on you, that you're expecting Tina to be the lead, and then it switches over to Nancy really abruptly.
Yeah, and also like the pacing of the film too, where you have like the opening shot of Freddy Krueger. Not sure, maybe this is when he was alive, or this is part of the dream, and he's building the glove, and then it immediately cuts to Tina having a nightmare. Like the pacing of the film is like this one thing I thought you would like. It wastes no time, and you immediately get thrown right into it right away.
Yeah, I was happy when I saw the hour and 30 run time.
Yeah.
I think that it did keep an appropriate pacing. It wasn't too slow. But it wasn't choppy either. It moved pretty smoothly through the whole film.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not really any slow parts. So there's no wasted, there's no wasted time on the screen.
I loved it. Maybe we can talk about some of these scenes of Nancy almost refuses to fall asleep, but I mean, you really can't help yourself but fall asleep, and how they blend reality into the dreamscape and back into reality. It's pretty amazing how smoothly Wes Craven was able to do that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Where you're left wondering, I'll use an example where like Heather tells Johnny Depp's character, you know, she has this huge plan and she's going to fall asleep, but Johnny Depp has to wake her up, and you know, she falls asleep and she asks, "Oh, are you still there?" And he like comes out behind the trees, and that to her should have been an indication, oh, this guy had fallen asleep, right? But you're not sure 100%. And yeah, it becomes, if you like are really paying attention to the film, it becomes difficult to really figure out exactly, where does the dream end and where does it start. I mean, that's kind of like if anybody in the audience is listening and had sleep paralysis, that's a real issue. You're not exactly sure. It takes a little while to figure out exactly, like, am I still dreaming? Is this still going on? And I'm not sure.
I was thinking too, when Johnny Depp was supposed to be, this is a weird thought that I had, when Johnny Depp was supposed to stay awake, and how natural it is to, it's in the middle of the night and you're tired and there's nothing to do and you just want to fall asleep. And how in the military and militaries all throughout history, when somebody was on guard, they had to stay awake, because if the enemy attacked or there was some reason, the people who were sleeping, you can't just snap your fingers and be fully awake and back into reality. You have to ease yourself back into reality. And if that person who was supposed to be awake isn't the one who has their faculties together, you're all in trouble. And in militaries in the past, that was a death penalty offense right there in the field if you fell asleep at your post. And that's how important it is when you have to stay awake to protect the people who are in that other state, in the dream state.
Well, that's why she gets so angry at him, It's like, I would be pissed off too. Like, girl, you're my boyfriend or whatever, girlfriend, and you're supposed to be, like, I asked you, all you had to do was just stay up. I don't care what you're doing, just stay up. And that's one of the kind of funny parts of the movie, I guess. And like, her boyfriend does not seem to understand the severity of the situation at all until it hits him.
And really, who does? Think about it. If it was your own kids and you're thinking in normal world like everybody else does, and they're coming and saying that I have these insane dreams and Freddy's really trying to kill me. You're sleep deprived because your child is up all night with this, screaming. So your grasp on your sanity really is getting loosened. And then they're really thinking this. I think that tension that they built up between the parents and Nancy was really, really spot on.
Oh yeah, I would probably think my kid was doing drugs or something. You know what I mean?
Go to flip and sleep.
Yeah, you'd lose your mind. But then there's like, they end up going to the dream clinic because Nancy's mother, she's worried, right? What's actually going on. She goes to the dream clinic, and Nancy this is I thought was one of the cooler things they did in the movie, where she has this terrifying dream at the dream clinic, and she gets like a shock of hair that turns white. Mm-hmm. We don't ever actually see what the dream was. I assume like Freddy was about to just, do her in. And she pulls out this hat that she brought out from the dream, which is, that's the cool thing about the movie. It has like all the Freddy Krueger movies. They all have this very kind of surrealist, David Lynchian kind of vibe to them. And that to me is another thing that makes them so unique, is there's a lot of artistry, I would argue, that goes into these movies. I'm not saying high art, but like Jason, in comparison to say like Jason Voorhees just shows up, he's got a hockey mask on and a machete. There's like a lot of imaginative stuff that went into this Nightmare, and even some of the sequels, which weren't so good, but I can appreciate the imagination that went into them, where a lot in this genre you just don't really get it. You don't get that. So she pulls this hat out. That to me would have been the moment where it's just like, all right, and her arm's cut, and I'm like, all right, how did you get this hat? How is your arm cut? I sat there and watched you sleep the entire time. Okay, there's something going on here. But the mother still doesn't, I don't know, she's still arguing with her about it.
Yeah. Maybe let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we really like with the movie, and I'll get started with that. I really like how they slowly gave us exposition on Fred Krueger and the other people. They didn't just show us all at once, and they didn't just do a throwaway flashback scene. That they all the background was really built through dialogue, which I think that's something special in almost any movie, and in this genre of kind of low end horror, to do something that clever, I think is something really special.
Well, if you're first going into the movie and you don't know anything about Freddy Krueger, I mean, I find that hard to believe now. Like, people know who Freddy Krueger is. He's a pop icon. We're going to probably talk a little bit about how that's really weird. But you have the opening shot and he's making the glove and he's like terrifying these kids in their dreams. You have no idea who this person is. And the cool part of the film, like, there's almost like there's like the mystery in the movie, like, who is this guy? And you're kind of learning along as Nancy learns along about who Fred Krueger is.
Then another thing that I really liked is that they don't show Fred very much, that they build a ton of suspense through lighting, visual, and camera shots without really showing very much. I thought that you would really appreciate that.
Yeah, to me, this is what some of the later sequels got wrong. Like, the less you see of Freddy, the better, and I think you still see Freddy a fair amount, but not, I mean, I don't think they overdo it, not a ton, right? Like, initially when you're seeing Freddy, he's like in the shadows and you can't really clearly see his face and he's kind of in the distance. And like the lighting in the movie is, I don't know, it's beautiful. I think it's really well shot, especially for something that was filmed very, pretty quickly I believe the budget was only $1 million.
Oh, wow. So even in 1984 money, that's not much to play with.
Yeah, it was Robert Shea and New Line Cinema. And there's the line, like, the house that Freddy built was New Line Cinema, because the Freddy Krueger franchise really did build New Line Cinema. Robert Shea and I believe his wife at the time basically mortgaged everything on this film to get the funding for it, and could have sank the company if it didn't work out.
Steve here again with a quick word from our sponsors. And then for me, even though the acting was a little wonky and a little over the top, but the fact that nobody would believe Nancy, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but I think that makes perfect sense. I wouldn't have believed her as a parent. And even having all these screaming dreams all night, being sleep deprived myself, I'd be in the same exact places as her parents. But also, I think you tapped into, once they see the hat and her arm's been slashed by razors, even though she's been sleeping in the sleep clinic, maybe that would start to raise some red flags too.
Yeah, I guess the way I've always kind of the way I've always interpreted it was the parents really can't face the horror. Like, they thought they had killed the monster, and yet the monster came back even more terrifying than he was before. And they're just kind of trying to wish it away. That's how I've always kind of interpreted it.
So what are some things that you really stuck with you in this movie? Things that you really enjoyed?
Like, I really liked like how the truth about who Freddy Krueger was, they kept it pretty much right until the end of the movie. And Nancy's mother tells her, Freddy Krueger was, all the things that we had talked about earlier, because when you're initially watching the movie, you don't know anything about this guy at all, really. And that mystery is, I don't know, to me, it builds a lot of terror in that character. I mean, Freddy Krueger himself, just the character, he lives in your dreams. He has the razor glove, which is just an iconic weapon. It's such a cool weapon, I'm not gonna lie. And he's got the dirty sweater and the hat and the burns. I mentioned before, like, Heather Langenkamp, like, her acting's a little... Horror's an interesting genre in the sense that, like, the acting can be wonky throughout the entire thing, but if everything else is done really well, you can kind of overlook it. Like, you can't do that with comedy. Like, if a guy's comedic timing's off, it ruins the joke and everything. You can't really do that with drama because it just sucks you right out. Whereas horror, and to a lesser degree sci-fi, it doesn't necessarily need A-list acting. I think Heather Langenkamp is good in the role. Obviously, she's a horror icon. But that she actually did look like the girl next door. I thought that was really important, that she seemed like she looked like a real person. I enjoyed the kind of the antagonistic relationship that her and her mother had, like the way she just calls her mother, and like the way she talks to her and yells at her. And there's a couple of funny bits, I think. I don't know if they were intentional or not, but I always kind of enjoyed that. For the most part, the practical effects are really well done. Like where Freddy Krueger's leaning in over Nancy through that ceiling.
Yeah, that was a great scene.
Where Tina's death is horrifying, and it's very well done. Especially with like Rod reaching out, because he's been having nightmares too, so he doesn't even know for sure what he's seeing in front of him is actually happening or not. And yeah, like the Johnny Depp's, like I guess probably the most famous scene where he gets pulled into the bed and it's just a geyser of blood coming out of it. Like I thought that was really well done. Some of the special effects you can tell are a little dated, probably most infamously where at the end of the movie and Nancy's walking away and she thinks she's defeated Freddy, and Freddy pulls Nancy's mother through the window. It's just terrible. It looks terrible. Even at the time, it looked terrible. I don't know what they were thinking. They should have just had Freddy open the door and just grab her.
Yeah, I think that the effects. What did they say? They used some insane amount, hundreds of gallons of fake blood in the movie, of stage blood in the movie.
Yeah. Which is so, like, I guess it was mostly that Johnny Depp scene, because there's really not a ton of blood in the movie. I mean, you think of like a teen horror genre, like Tina's death is pretty bloody, but I mean, Rod's death, he's hung. Yeah. And that's another thing that's unique about the movie. There's not a lot of people get killed in the movie, really. And that's something that's unique in the Freddy films in general, is the body count, I guess you want to call it, if you want to be a horror nerd, are never very high.
That's the thing too, with even the way Johnny Depp died, it was not really over the top violent. It was metaphorically violent. That blood shooting out of the bed like a geyser was not realistic in any way. I think it was supposed to mean that he was just being almost like killed in the other dimension, and in the other dimension the rules don't follow. And that's maybe why when they had the medical examiner and that Nancy's father, who's the hard-bitten police lieutenant, says that the coroner's throwing up his guts in the bathroom. And I mean, a city coroner sees things that true horrors probably every day that we would be horrified and scarred for the rest of our lives. And that's scarred in him for the rest of his life.
Yeah. And the music score for this movie, it's a synth. It's like a synth band that does it. It's like it's very heavy synthesizers.
Yeah, very new line.
I mean, it's very
cinema.
unique. Yeah, it's very unique in terms of the genre. In terms of like it actually has like a good melody to it, and it the way it's done, it almost kind of like lures you into this dream logic.
It puts you into the 80s too. I think even if you weren't born into the 80s, I think it puts you into that. It makes you feel like you're in a place.
Yeah.
And time. Now, some things that we didn't like, Chris, what were some things that you didn't like?
Like I pointed them out, like some of the practical effects haven't aged all that well. I mean, a little bit, some of the acting and some of the scenes is a little wonky. But I really don't have many like complaints about the movie. I mean, it's a classic. It's, people say, "Oh, it's cliche." That this movie built the cliches. That you can't call it cliche. I love it. It's like high for the time. It was highly original. I mean, even still to this day, it is really highly original. It's highly imaginative. It's everything that I want out of a horror film.
I think the one thing that I struggled with is that it had on two polar opposites, that it was a really serious horror film, and then on the other side it was a teen slasher film, and it didn't really try to meld them together. It just kept playing one off of the other. In this scene, we're going to be this really serious dark horror film. On this side, we're going to be then we're going to bounce over to another scene that's cheesy teen horror. I think if they had tightened that up a little bit, they could have gotten that two demographics together and made it a little bit more seamless.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say, yeah, that's a fair complaint. It's a little jarring. Kind of the mix mash of the genres, I guess.
And then I think the one thing when we were talking about this, preparing for this episode, the one thing that I think we both would really love to have seen is just taking out that teen horror slasher element all together and really just leaning into being a dark horror movie, because when Freddy, as the other movies come along, Freddy Krueger just turns into a meme. And he's all comic, he's all cartoon. And I think there's a nugget there, or a kernel of a really nasty, truly terrifying horror character that just gets washed away and tumble repeat of this Freddy Krueger genre that's really, really bad. But they could have really done something with him special.
Well, initially, from my understanding, they were going to make it was going to be very explicit that Freddy Krueger was a pedophile and a child killer, and he was going to be much darker. But from my understanding, they pulled back from that because of the I don't know if your audience knows, but at this time this movie came out, the satanic panic was going on, and they thought, no, let's just not do that. We'll just kind of hint that was going on. So, I mean, I don't think they really would have got many of the sequels, to be quite honest with you, if they went full on with that, but we probably would have got a better movie. I mean, like, I really enjoyed this movie, but there's a part of me I just want them one time just go full on complete dark with Freddy Krueger. At the core of it, that's what it is, right? He's like I have pointed out during this podcast, there's nothing sympathetic about Freddy Krueger. He's absolutely terrifying. He's sick. He's twisted in a much more darker way than all these other horror film characters. Like, it's so bizarre to me that Freddy Krueger ended up becoming this pop icon when you take into account his backstory. It's just screaming for a horror film that's pushing the limits.
I like how they give us that hint of the satanic panic. I think that it was enough to get maybe the kids interested in, oh, this is going to really tweak my parents. And it's enough that the parents don't go see this movie. But it didn't go all in on the demonic aspect of Freddy Krueger, which I think, if, like you said, if they had made that movie in 1984, you would have never have heard of Freddy Krueger ever again.
Yeah, but there's no reason that they can't do it now, right? There's Robert Englund is the guy who's played Freddy Krueger in every single one of the movies, and in a lot of ways he is Freddy Krueger. In some ways he created Freddy Krueger, right? Along with Wes, for kind of what Freddy Krueger became. And, we can debate about that. That's not really here nor there. But they really could make that movie nowadays. You'd have to get somebody else to play Freddy Krueger. And I'm not one of these nerds that say, like, only Robert Englund can play Freddy Krueger and nobody else. No, let Jackie Earle, he played Freddy Krueger in the remake, which there's issues with that movie. I'm not going to get into all the details in it, but I thought he actually did a really good performance, and nothing ever really came out of that, but for different reasons. But yeah, I'd have somebody else play Freddy Krueger and make that really dark Freddy Krueger movie. There's really no reason they can't do it.
And I think it's been enough time that you could do a total reboot of the franchise. Unlike, some of these other ones, they keep slapping out a Halloween that's kind of more mediocre than the last one, just to cash in on the name, where I think start over with Freddy Krueger and rebuild him from the bottom up.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, Lou, we didn't really plan this. So, like, who do you think could play Freddy Krueger?
Oh man, I don't know. I think you don't want somebody too young necessarily, unless you were going back to, that could be interesting, of doing the Freddy Krueger before A Nightmare on Elm Street, but I don't think you could make that movie.
No, it would be. I think you could. You couldn't make it. You'd have to do a lot of like stuff in the shadows and stuff in the background. You know what I mean? Like you couldn't make it explicit for obvious reasons.
I think, you know what, the Freddy Krueger would be good as a book.
There are a couple novels. I've read one or two of them.
Was it very good?
The one that I read was pretty good. Like the Freddy Krueger was like a lot darker and a lot like sick and twisted and perverted. Yeah, and I mean, and some of the later well, that's always been a part of Freddy Krueger too, is like he's like a sexual pervert, right? You know what I mean? Like it just gets back to the point of like, how did this guy become a pop icon? But
yeah,
I don't know, he did. I would say sorry.
That speaks a lot. That really speaks a lot to our culture, that somebody like that would become an icon.
It is really crazy. My pick, if they were going to redo it, Paul Bentley, I think, would do a really good Freddy Krueger.
I think also there's so many movies. I've mentioned this on many podcasts before. Quentin Tarantino wrote a novelization of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he filled in a lot of the blanks that the movie didn't discuss. And a lot of times you read novelizations of a movie and they're just garbage, where he's such a good writer. He really did make a perfect companion to the movie. And it's almost, the book is better than the movie. I'd love to see something like that done with the Freddy Krueger, where you could really get into the head of the characters in a way with the book that you just can't do in a novel, or in a film rather.
Well, you mentioned like the like how like the prequel, like before Freddy became the Freddy that we know. Maybe you do that, where you do it in like a novel form, where, you know, people know what they're kind of getting into, because you can't really show that on screen, and then have that as being like the companion to this reboot that we're talking about.
Yeah, or you could even, I think it would be really fun to get into the themes and the issues around especially in the 2020s context, where there's so much problem with crime and a failed judicial system, of a town that has somebody like Fred Krueger, and the judicial system is completely failed. And then they do take country justice, a total mild-mannered suburb of doctors and lawyers and computer programmers and firemen and nurses, and they just say, no, we're not putting up with this. This guy is going down, and we're doing it. And to see what takes a town to get pushed to that point, I think that's almost more interesting than Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, that would be a cool idea. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could, if you wanted, you could reboot the franchise, or maybe you stop it at one point, say, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, okay, boom, we're going to continue from this point. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you could go about it. Like, I just want to see Fred Krueger. I want to see somebody else do the role.
All right. Well, I think that's where we're going to leave it today. There's a lot to talk about with this movie and horror. We're probably going to put a pin in horror until next year again, but we may revisit. There's some deep concepts and some other horror films that we can really dive into. We've got series coming up on the Mafia, some other science fiction stuff. So if there's some movies out there that you want to hear a couple of guys go into a deep dive on and talk about history, talk about morality, theology, we're here for you. So contact us through the website, a2zhistorypage.com, Steve at a2zhistorypage.com. We're going to be doing some more things on social media. And so we will definitely talk to you next time.